Once again, hello and welcome to session on the SAP Materials Management Part 2. Basically, as I explained in the Part 1, this particular presentation is intended to give the overview of the module in brief, and also training aspect related to this particular module. Actually, I plan to do the entire presentation in one session, but I didn't realize I had a hard stop and suddenly I had to abruptly stop the part 1. I'm sorry about it. So we'll continue from where you left. Before you do that, let me also correct some, I won't say mistakes. Basically, one or two places it got mixed up in the part 1 that I tried to correct them here. Also, I forgot to highlight some one or two points that also I'll do it. In the enterprise structure level, when you're discussing, I thought I could have elaborated more on the controlling area, which I didn't do. So now I can explain. Overall accounting module is the main module under which we have two sub-modules, controlling and financial accounting. For the entire accounting module, we have controlling area is the highest unit. Actually, you have the client, then operating concern, then you have the controlling area. We say controlling area is at a higher level because we assign one or many company codes to controlling area. So from accounting perspective, we can say controlling area happens to be the highest unit. For the day-to-day accounting purpose, which happens through financial accounting, company code is the highest unit. Basically, controlling area will provide the cost accounting environment in the business. It is very important for the business to do business activities in such a way they have a proper control on the profitability. Thereby, they must know the incidence of the cost, must be able to define the standard cost and measure the actual cost. And also, as and when the transactions are recorded, the cost part, also maybe revenue, could be posted to a separate area. Whenever you post a document in FI accounting document, a parallel controlling document is also posted. So we maintain controlling area so that you can maintain associated environment in the controlling area in the form of cost center and other objects. So whenever you record any transaction, we post the data in the financial accounting. Corresponding controlling document also should be posted. Actually, I'm not a expert in financial accounting or controlling area, but because of the working in the SAP environment over the years, I got acquainted to them. And also I know how to use both the environments in connection with the SAP Materials Management. Any SAP consultant for that matter should know the complete environment. Although we specialize in one particular area, we must have the proper understanding of other modules that will enhance our understanding skills and also able to contribute more efficiently in the project. So we are going to see how to make use of controlling area, cost center in certain business scenario, like when you are purchasing for direct consumption or service purchase, we do make use of the controlling area and the cost center. So that part we'll see. Also, while explaining the concept of the source list, I have added the information in the particular slide. Source list is something maintained for material at a plant level. I forgot to mention that, so it should be taken into consideration. Apart from this, I think the part 1 was okay. There would be some mix-up here and there, but it is not intended. Inadvertently, it would have happened. So please note the corrections according to your understanding. Moving forward, we now get into part 2 of the presentation. In the part 1, we ended at the condition master. That part we have done. So moving forward, more or less we have discussed about the master data aspect in the MM. Moving forward now, we will concentrate on the business processes. Overall, application module under logistics, we have materials management. Under material management, we have got various applications. This is basically a screenshot from the SAP menu. You can also go to the SAP screen itself. That will give us an idea. So I've taken here logistics module alone so that you can concentrate. In logistics, we have the materials management. And broadly speaking, under the materials management, these are the various applications that will be running on day-to-day basis. As you would notice, purchasing happens to be the first very important application that comes into picture, because the end-to-end process will start with the purchasing activity. Again, in purchasing, we are not talking about only creating a purchase order. There's so many other documents which can be created apart from the purchase order that we will get into as we go along. Like if I open the purchasing node, you can see purchase order, requisition, agreements in the form of quantity contract, scheduling contract, and request for quotation. Master data here is added here as a part of purchasing. This is what we have seen in the earlier presentation, like info record, source list, quota arrangement, we have seen that, and then environment. Now, first in business process, what we'll be concentrating will be purchasing, followed by inventory management. So we'll go in the particular way how it has been given here so that you can understand each and every business process. Of course, here we cannot go much deep into the process, but we try to highlight, because during the training program, this is what we're going to learn in detail. Also, I try to avoid purposely putting a lot of images and other aspects so that we can concentrate on the communication, what I'm doing, and also the information what is there on the slide. So maybe we can take up the images and illustrations actually when the training happens. That's the whole idea. Let's start with the application, purchasing. Many times you hear the word procurement and purchasing. Sometimes you use them inadvertently, one and the other. But basically, procurement is a larger concept. Many processes that you read in the procurement lead to purchasing activity. Final activity is purchasing, where business gets into creating a purchase order to be sent to the vendor. But for that to happen, we also do so many other activities in the system. Collectively, that becomes part of the procurement. Basically, purchasing module in SAP will help us to process the acquisition of the goods. Basically, we are going to order the goods and services to the vendor. Thereby, as and when they deliver the goods or services, we acquire them as part of our business. And to that extent, we are also adding the cost into the operation. In the purchasing, we have various business processes that includes creating purchase requisitions, followed by purchase orders, also maintaining supply relationships. Apart from this, we also have other business processes like outline agreements. They are also part of the purchasing. Source determination is built in the purchasing process so that always we fix a potential source of supply so that we know this is the right source for the purchasing process to happen for the material. Also, it includes certain aspect of vendor evaluation and the selection. Vendor evaluation I have not discussed in detail here, but it will be part of our training course when you start the training. Purchase order processing is the end user process. As and when required, they can create the purchase order. Now, although we can always create a purchase order manually upfront, purchase orders can also be created in the background based on the purchase requisitions created in the requirement planning. Like in SAP Retail, why I'm trying to bring retail is there also we have the Most of the time, the business is dealing with huge number of articles or materials in the operation. You cannot specifically say, I want to order this material or this article. Based on the demand planning, requirement planning, or MC distribution, we'll come to know this is the requirement, and that requirement will be reflected in the form of purchase requisition when the MRP runs will happen. And based on purchase requisitions, purchase orders can be created. Although we should know technically how to create purchase order, we can also make it to happen automatically in the background based on certain upfront business process. Basically, we can create a purchase order and track till the complete end-to-end business process. Whole idea is that, we are ordering the material in time so that vendor has sufficient time to deliver the goods to us and then carry out subsequent process in the inventory management and invoice verification. Inventory management is the next important application. It is the heart of the SAP MM. In inventory management, we basically record various material movements. Certain movements will add the stock to the plant and storage location. Certain movements will reduce the stock. So basically, when you do goods receipt, we have received the goods from the external supplier based on the standard purchase order, and we physically receive the goods in the plant and the storage location. The user will record the goods receipt. Depending on the goods receipt, certain documents are posted. What are these documents? We will see in future. Now, goods receipt can happen with respect to a purchase order, with respect to a stock transfer purchase order. It can also happen because of the transfer postings. We will see that in the future. Goods issue is basically you're recording the consumption. The goods issue can happen in the form of issuing the raw materials to production, or when you created a sales order, you create a delivery document. Through the delivery document, you post the goods issue so that consumption is recorded. Stock transfer process also involves the relocation of stock from one plant and one storage location to another plant and another storage location. Here also, step 1, step 2 process will happen. The stock transfer can be done in many ways. We will explore them in the future discussion. The stock transfer essentially happens between two plants and the corresponding storage locations. It can also happen between the storage locations within the plant. It can also happen between the plants belonging to two different company codes. So we will examine those scenarios in future. Physical inventory is the most important audit requirements in the company. We have book quantity reflected in the inventory management, how much is the stock quantity and the value. But you need to examine what is the physical quantity actually, because over the period of time, what will happen, there is bound to happen some kind of discrepancy between the actual quantity physically counted and the book quantity. We have to cover these discrepancies by posting certain material documents and in accounting documents so that, we synchronize the actual physical quantity with the book quantity. This is a regular activity. Depending on the value of the article or the material, we may have to do once in a month or once in 3 months. The periodicity depends on the value of the material and transactions. In any way, year ending, we almost carry out this activity of physical inventory process. Invoice verification is the almost like last transaction what to do in the purchase to pay cycle. Like in sales and distribution, we start with the sales order, end up with creating the billing document. Billing document is a umbrella term. We create different types of invoices. Invoice processing happens where we are informing the customer about the value of the goods and services given to the customer. So based on the invoice, they will be able to make the payment. And when the invoice is prepared, automatically it will do the account determination and posting will happen to financial accounting in the form of the accounting document. But here we are buying the product and services from the vendor. To that effect, vendor will send their invoice. We have to enter that information in the system by creating invoice in the MM system. Because unless invoice is prepared, we cannot post anything to financial accounting. So We enter the vendor invoices and thereby a accounting document is posted. Payables are updated. Only when the payables are updated, we'll be able to make the payment to the vendor. Now, why it is called verification, we will see in future. As and when vendor will supply the goods to us or provide the service, they will provide an invoice to us, which is their document. We'll enter that information in the system and verify it with respect to certain documents like purchase order, good receipt document. So ensure that everything is correct. Then only you post the data to financial accounting, and then vendor account is credited, reconciliation account is credited, whereby payables are updated. Next important critical application that we have come across in the is materials requirement planning. This is the most crucial application from the business perspective. We are dealing with so many materials in our organization. At any given point of time, they have a certain quantity of stock available. But at any given point of time, we must be able to know whether we require supposed to add certain stock to our organization, thereby purchase the material. This has to be decided based on the available information in the system. We cannot add higher stock in the operation, which will lead to inventory cost building up, but consumption is not happening that way. Or we are maintaining lesser inventory, which will basically make the consumption to suffer. Will not be able to supply the goods to customers, or will not be able to provide the raw materials to production. So at any given point of time, you must have an optimum level of inventory so that the quantity is available to meet the consumption requirements, avoiding excess stock or lesser stock, thereby maintaining optimum inventory. This part is ensured by the proper material requirement planning. For material requirement planning, we have various sources, like we can do the demand planning, where we calculate the required quantity of the material based on the production schedule or sales forecast. We can also do forecast planning in itself. We have various MRP types and MRP procedures are available. Based on the forecast also, we come to know what is the estimated quantity in our organization in future periods on weekly basis or monthly or days basis. That will provide the information for the requirement planning. The actual run will happen where it will generate the procurement proposals. Based on the MRP run, we know how much quantity is required for the material at what given point of time. To that effect, it will create a purchase requisition in the module. If the material happens to be required in the production, like a finished good, a planned order is created. So for the PP purpose, planned order. For the purchasing process, purchase requisitions are created, so that we have the source document to carry forward the next activity of creating a purchase order or a production order. Reporting analysis. In each module, SAP will provide certain reporting structures, analyzing tools like information system. Has got a lot of built-in reporting facility, which will help us to generate our reports as and when required. But if required, always the help of the ABAP team, they can develop the reports required for the business. But the standard reporting is always built in and we have got a lot of reports facility available in the We will see in the training program how to create these reports. Also, whenever you do transaction, the transaction data can be updated in the LIS structure, logistics information system, which will act as a miniature BI or BW, you can say, which is already built in SAP. So you can analyze the data from the business perspective. Now, let us go to straight away purchasing module in SAP We have got various scenarios available in purchasing, starting with the standard procurement, which you again classify as direct purchase and indirect purchase, subcontracting, procurement, consignment, stock transfer, third party procurement, RTP, returnable transport packaging, pipeline procurement, and service requirement or service procurement. Each of these specific business process requires certain configurations, which you will understand during the training program. Each of them requires a very detailed configuration in the system, and accordingly, the process can be recorded. Let us try to go through each one of them. Now, as far as the standard procurement is concerned, we can broadly divide them into two categories: direct purchasing and indirect purchasing. Both of these will serve different purposes in the organization, and there's a different set of end-to-end business process. Direct purchase has its own end-to-end business process. Indirect purchase also has end-to-end process. We will try to understand. Now, when you say direct purchasing, we are basically purchasing materials that are required in the production process or in the final product sold to customer. Suppose, say, for example, from the production requirement to require certain raw materials, if raw materials are available in the stock, then only they'll be able to produce. So you need the stock for the raw material in the plant and storage location. We procure such raw materials through the purchase order, and once you perform the goods receipt, they'll get added to the stock. I can go to the stock reporting and see whether sufficient quantity of raw materials is available. And when you create the production order, we can consume these raw materials for actual production purpose. Or suppose you have some product which you purchase from the external vendor and supply to the customer, like trading goods. There also requires a stock item. That means when you create a sales order, system can do the availability check and see whether enough stock is available, and thereby confirm the sales order and deliver the product to customer. So we are talking of purchasing activity which will add the stock into our organization. So when you perform the goods receipt, it will post the inventory document and also accounting document. It is updating the quantity part in the inventory management and accounting valuation part in the financial accounting. So both the documents are created. And these are basically stock items. Now comes to indirect purchasing. Suppose, say, for example, we have plant maintenance department. They are in the process of attending a breakdown call for a equipment. They require certain spare parts immediately. Based on that requirement, you purchase a spare part from the vendor and you send it for direct consumption. That means it will not become a stock item. Or for instance, certain operating supplies are required, office supplies for that matter. These are not going to be maintained in the inventory management because these happen to be low value item and they are not going to be consumed on the quantity basis. So as and when you purchase them directly, we don't post into stock item, we directly post to consumption. We'll be maintaining a cost center, a GL account, so direct consumption account is posted. So you'll never have the inventory information, but sometimes maybe quantity level, we want to have the information, but not at the value level. We will see how those modifications can be done. So indirect purchasing involves purchasing materials and services. They are not required to be used in the production or any other such process, but are necessary for day-to-day operations, like maintenance activities, spare parts, office supplies. In such case, we go for the indirect purchase. So when the goods receipt will happen, accordingly, it will basically post the consumption accounts. We will see that part in the future. That's why when you configure material type, you say whether quantity updating should happen, value updating happen. That will precisely control. Like for some cases, we may like only quantity updated but not value. Both are not required to be updated. We will explore them in the future. Now we will concentrate on SAP purchasing standard procurement. This is the one which is used quite widely in the organization, almost like on day-to-day basis. It involves purchasing the materials from the external vendors, and it is something that we see as a very basic day-to-day procurement activity happening in the company. Now, usually, although you can create a purchase order directly, it always has to happen with the purchase requisition. Because purchase organization as a department is going to order the goods on behalf of the company. But what is the material required, what is the quantity required, when required, they are not the ones who will decide. That has to come from the consumption department, where they actually require the material, like production department or sales department. So usually they prepare an internal purchase document, which is called purchase requisition. Purchase requisition will inform the purchase department, so and so materials required, so and so quantity, along with the source. Source also can be determined in the purchase requisition. And also purchase orders can be created with the quota arrangement. So essentially what we say, always practice in the business is to create a purchase requisition, source determination happen. Sometimes the material what is required for the department may not be available as a regular material. We don't have the source for that. Then the purchase organization can go for the request for the quotation, identify the vendors, publish it, and then collect the quotations from various vendors, analyze them, and then finalize the vendors for the material. And based on that, info records also can be updated. So the information is available to that extent so that, a purchase equation is created, and then you go for the purchase order. Purchase order is the final process, or you can say final process in the procurement part, but basically it's the first activity what you record in the procurement to pay cycle or purchase order to pay cycle. We create a purchase order, and then it will have various controls for tracking the purchase order in the future, how goods receipt should happen, how the invoice verification should happen, all these pricing calculations, output determination, all these will happen automatically in the background for the purchase order. Once the purchase order is sent to the vendor, they can supply the goods to us. We can also maintain some confirmations also from the vendor. Like once you send a purchase order, we must have kind of tracking facility. Is it confirmed by the vendor that they'll be able to supply? Whether the confirmation should update the information in the MRP? Should the confirmation should come in the form of advance shipping notification? All these will become part of the purchase order processing. Physically, when the goods are received by the plant, they'll perform the goods receipt, and goods receipt will update the quantity in the storage location. Also to that effect, GL accounts are determined in terms of the material account, GR account, because we also require the GR account balance to do the invoice verification. So both the material document and inventory documents are material document, that is the material document, and the accounting documents are posted in the system. Once the goods are received by us, we also have to enter the vendor invoice, because you have to pay to the vendor the amount as per the invoice. For that, you need to enter the details of the invoice in the system by doing the invoice verification. And finally, once the payables are updated, financial accounting department will make the payment in the form of payment processing. That is the part which FI will handle. As a consultant, we have to ensure invoice verification happens successfully and payables are updated in the accounting system. Subcontract is a specific, or you can say specialized kind of purchasing. You can say it is not something like day to day. It is subcontract process. There are certain scenarios where company cannot have the production facility. They cannot invest the money for producing certain materials, products in the organization, because the quantity does not justify the investment. But they need this product. So they will subcontract this product to external vendor. Vendor has a facility to manufacture such product, but raw materials are required for that. We want to ensure proper raw materials with the right quantity and the right quality is given to the vendor. So we're ensuring that, material components are in our control. Production facility will be used by the vendor in their organization to build the product. So basically, we create a subcontract purchase order, which will help us to identify what is the product we are ordering, what are the components for the final production to happen. And once you create a purchase order, we have the components available. Either these components are coming from the purchase equation or through the bill of material data, components are identified. Once you create a purchase order for the subcontract, based on that, you transfer the inventory of the raw materials to the vendor in the form of goods issue. Certain quantity as per the component level, quantity is given to the vendor. Based on that, they do the production. And once the production is complete, they will send the final product to the company. We process the goods receipt. When the goods receipt will happen, that time we will adjust the inventory quantity and also accounting document are posted. That means initially some raw materials have been given. That quantity has to be adjusted. And you have to update the value of the goods actually used in the consumption. Also to that effect, GRIR should update the payable for the vendor. So we perform the goods receipt when the subcontract item comes into the organization. Then we do the invoice verification and post to accounting department. So we will see how to do this in the actual classes. Consignment procurement. Consignment procurement is a business process that happens in sales and distribution, also in module. The perspective is different. In sales and distribution, we supply certain products to customer. The stock is maintained at the customer level. When you supply the goods to customer, we do not invoice them. We relocate the stock to the customer location. As and when the customer will consume, we prepare the invoice. That means customer does not have to invest money in the entire quantity, rather only pay the money for the consumption. So they have ready to use the stock, but unless stock is consumed, we don't ask the payment for the customer. Likewise here, vendor will send certain quantity of material to our plant. It will be held as a consignment stock. We are not the actual owner of the stock. And we don't have to make payment to the vendor. But when you actually consume, that time we will make the payment to the vendor. So vendor is parking certain quantity of the material in our organization so that as and when consumption happens, we will pay the money to vendor. This is very much required in cases where we don't have a linear kind of consumption or delivery takes a longer period. Vendor is located in faraway place. So you need sometimes immediately material for the production. So in that case, if we have the consignment stock, we can make use of them. So you create a consignment info record. By the way, in the first session, I happened to explain about info record. Info record can be created with the different categories like standard info record, subcontract info record, you can say consignment info record, pipeline info record. So here you create a consignment info record. We will have the goods receipt happening from the vendor. Then condition of the consignment stock is recorded using the regular transfer. Then we settle the consignment liabilities. That means we receive the stock, we add it to the inventory, but only as and when you consume, we do the settlement and then do the invoice verification and payment processing. If you happen to work in sales and distribution, you will know a lot of comparison happens between there and here, but slightly different way, but concept is same. Comes the stock transfer. Basically, stock transfer can be described as a particular kind of material movement. Now, in the stock transfer, there are two steps, step 1, step 2. Whenever stock transfer happens, step 1 will record who is sending the material, from which location. Step 2 will happen when they actually receive the stock, in which plant they are received and in which particular storage location the stock will be added. Step 1 will record the issuable process from the sender. Step 2 will happen updating the receipt in the receiving party. Stock transfer can happen between two plants, thereby the respective storage locations, or stock transfer can happen between the storage locations within the plant. It can happen between plants belonging to the same company. It can also happen between plants belonging to different company codes. Now, there are various ways of doing the stock transfer, but the most appropriate way would be creating a stock transfer purchase order. This will give a lot of control in the system. It is like a standard process whereby you have the kind of standardization process controlled. Like whenever you get a stock transfer order, it will update the material requirement list. Some kind of reservation can happen. So first come first basis, we can say stock can be given to so and so issuer. It will also help us to schedule delivery in the form of delivery schedules. So it starts with the creation of the stock transfer purchase order. Based on purchase order, we issue the stock from the sending plant and storage location. Such stock is also called as stock in transit. The moment you issue the stock, it is in transit. Physically, when it is received by the receiving party, they will perform the goods receipt and it will update the inventory. Here, depending on the scenario, we will have to see how the inventory documents are posted and accounting documents are posted. So that is the most interesting part. And there are certain movement types which are given for this process. We will see what are the scenarios in the stock transfer and then how to perform them in the system. Third-party procurement. This is a kind of an integration between sales and distribution and EMM, materials management. Sales and distribution, the sales organization is going to sell certain products which are not in the stock because these are not something always asked by the customers, but the company can procure them and then supply to customer. Sometimes what happens, there are certain products which they cannot manufacture, they cannot maintain the stock, but it is something asked by the customers. Like for example, in air conditioning, some specialized filters are required. But manufacturing those filters may not be ideal because it doesn't justify the investment in terms of production facility. And it's not something everything a regular basis the customers are going to ask for. So as and when the customers require, the company can supply these filters, air conditioning filters. Or there are certain products which are available from the supplier in different location. We have customers in different location. If you purchase them and stock them, then the transportation cost will increase and logistics activities will increase more. So in such case, what to do? Go for third-party sales. Customer will tell us what is the requirement. We prepare the sales order. In the sales order, system will automatically determine the purchase requisition. The purchase requisition is created. Here, item category will play a very important role. In sales and distribution, the entire item level processing will happen based on the item category. Very dynamic control will happen from the item category. There are two types of item category possible. In one scenario, based on the sales order, purchase requisition created. Based on purchase requisition, you create a purchase order and send a purchase order to vendor. But vendor will supply directly the goods to the customer. That means the stock does not come to our plant. Based on purchase order, the vendor will send the goods directly to customer and they will do the invoice processing and send it to invoice to us. Based on the invoice, this is the quantity what is actually sent to the customer. It's a proof that, stock has been delivered to customer. Maybe customer acknowledgement also may be sent along with the invoice. Once you enter the vendor invoice, when you do the invoice verification, then you'll update the payable to the vendor. Only after invoice verification, we'll be able to do billing document in sales and distribution. We create an invoice for the customer. Another way we can handle this is based on the sales order, purchase requisition created or sent to the vendor. Vendor will send the goods to us. It becomes our plant stock, and then we deliver the goods to the customer and then do the billing. And when the vendor sends the goods to us, naturally, we can also do the invoice verification. So it becomes a stock item. In the first scenario, we don't get the stock. It is delivered directly to the customer. Invoice verification becomes the most important link. Unless invoice verification happens in the system, we cannot create the invoice for the customer. There's also a concept of returnable transport packaging. We also have it in the sales and distribution. In certain cases, what happens, we buy certain products or materials from the vendor. It involves packaging, which is very costly. Actually, there's a certain cost to these packaging materials. But once the material is received, we have no use of them. So in that case, what to do? Instead of investing money in the packing material, which is going to be wastage of investment, and they can be reused. So what the company will do, the company will send back these packing material alone back to the vendor. So you create a RTP, returnable packaging purchase order, perform the goods receipt, and once the goods have been received, we will send back the only packaging materials back to the vendor, so that we don't have to keep this stock, packing material as a stock, because it is no use to the company. But the vendor can use them in supplying to some other company. So that is the concept of the returnable packaging. Pipeline procurement. This is also one very specialized kind of procurement. Pipeline procurement, as the name itself indicates, where we are getting some kind of supplies in the form of water, gas, or electricity for production facility or plant. In this case, a vendor is supplying all these supplies to us, and we have to pay them. So for that purpose, we have a pipeline info record is created. On the consumption, we do automatic goods receipt, and then based on invoice verification, and then do payment processing. This is a very specialized kind of purchasing activity. Pipeline, because the material is delivered in the form of pipe. So that is the reason we call it as pipeline procurement. Process is slightly different here, but we'll see how to configure and how to run this process. Service procurement. Suppose, say, for example, we have certain maintenance activity to be done for the equipment supplied by the vendor, or we have to do some kind of, painting activity in the plant. I mean, for that matter, this activity is not physical, first of all. Suppose the person has to come and attend to the product in the operational breakdown call, a maintenance activity. It is basically happening in terms of hours, how much of time they spend at the plant to repair the product or painting a particular plant. For that matter, a service is a non-physical material. So you can procure such services from the vendor. Service procurement involves acquisition of services instead of the physical goods. So there is no physical good here, material, but we record a service master data. What is the service we have to vendor? We create a service purchase order. And then when the service is rendered, we enter the service entry sheet. Service entry sheet is something comparable to goods receipt. In service sheet, we come to know what is the actual work performed, how many hours or what activity they have done. And for that, we have the pricing data. We will confirm that entry sheet in the system, accepting the service rendered by the vendor. Based on that, invoice verification will happen and payment processing will happen. So this is again involving purchase order processing, but here you're going to make use of the controlling area, cost center, and a very different way you create the master record for the service itself. So this we'll see during the training program. Now comes the inventory management. As I said before earlier also, it is a very critical component because end of the day, when you say material management, indirectly it also means inventory management because we are holding the material as a stock in our organization. So that has to happen appropriately as per the standards. So inventory management as a part of the MM module will help us to build that competency in the system. Inventory management is something happens through a business process, basically recording or tracking the goods movement happening within our organization, thereby updating the stock level. And also, proper inventory management will be required to ensure the stock is available for the consumption. It may be in production or sales requirement. We have the stock. And inventory management stock information is also required in the requirement planning. So basically, it will have two main important business processes, recording the goods receipt and issue and the storage. We can also make use of the warehouse management if the business requires. That means inventory management happens at two levels, the MM storage location and at the warehouse level. So this is the overall understanding of the inventory management. What are the important concepts in the inventory management? Goods movement, stock types, movement types. All this I will explain briefly in the next slides. First, we'll start with the goods movement. Goods movement, as the name itself indicates, material movements are recorded in the system. This can include performing goods receipt as and when the stock is received, or as and when the stock is issued to departments or to the customer, the goods issue, transfers, stock transfer between the plants, between the storage location, and other movements. Now, the movements are basically classified into four types. GR, goods receipt. It's an inbound activity. Receipt means we are receiving the material into our organization. It's an inbound process. And based on the goods receipt, system will post the documents in inventory management and also accounting. Goods issue, we are letting the stock to go away from our plant and storage location. So ownership is removed from the company. The outbound process will basically make us to provide the stock to production department, sales department, or other purposes. Stock transfer. Stock transfer is a kind of a movement where the movement of materials happening between the storage locations within the company, within the plants or company code. Transfer posting. Transfer posting means using particular movement type, we vary the status of the movement, the status of the inventory. For example, we have received certain stock and while adding the goods receipt, we have put the stock as stock under quality inspection. But then after inspection is complete from the QM department, we update the stock status to unrestricted use. So that means transfer posting means we are giving a status to the existing inventory according to the activity what is happening within the organization. Or certain stock has been kept as blocked condition, and then we will update it to unrestricted use. Or from unrestricted use, we have put the stock into blocked condition. So all these status updates will happen in the transfer posting. There are certain movement types available in the system. They will ensure all these activities can be performed. Another very important aspect of inventory is stock type. That means we can have some kind of classification for the stocks, what we have in the storage location or in the plant. Like one of the status is unrestricted stock, which means there are no restrictions for the consumption. Like we have got a sales order and we want to deliver the goods to customer. Straight away, based on the order, you can create the delivery. Based on the delivery, the stock can be delivered to customer. Or a production order is there. Based on that, we perform the goods issue, taking the stock from the unrestricted stock. Or when you receive the goods from the vendor, if suppose you are happy with the quality and the quantity and all the aspect, immediately it is put into storage location for the unrestricted stock. Quality inspection stock. Stock has been received, but as per the business process requirement, the quality department has to carry out the inspection process, ensure that vendor has delivered the right material with the right quantity and not right quantity, right quality, so that it can meet our requirements. So the goods visit, when it has happened, it is put under inspection status or quality inspection stock. That means it is not available for the consumption. Only when the QM department has certified, it becomes unrestricted stock, then you can consume. Blocked stock. Now, there are some goods visit which have happened, but we find quality is not good. We block it completely. That means nothing can be consumed from this. Maybe you can send it back to the vendor itself, or some are in a bad condition, you can scrap them. So this is a block stock. In transit stock. This is a typical scenario what comes under the stock transfer, where stock is moving from one location to another location. It is physically not in any plant, in any storage location, but it is on the road. It is basically stock in transit. And whenever the goods are received by the receiving party, they will update the goods receipt. Now, one important part of recording the movements in the inventory management is movement type. I feel amazed the level at which movement type controls are maintained in the system. It's a proprietary data given by SAP when the software is given. All the standard movement types are provided by the system, ready to use. That means, as such, with the existing movement type, you can carry out all the material movements. But if suppose some movement type is not available, we can always copy from the nearest one and then maintain a new one. But we cannot create any movement type in the configuration as a new entry. Just like material type, we cannot create any material type on our own with a new entry. We have to copy from a nearest material type, and then adjustment can be done to create a new material type. Likewise here, we can copy an existing movement type, adjust the controls, and set up the new movement type. The movement types have got very detailed updating controls, which is very interesting part of the movement type. It also has a control in terms of the transactions with which you can update the financial accounting. That is actually when you do in account determination, the transactions controls also will come from the movement type. Update controls are very important. We cannot manually maintain these update controls. Whenever we copy an existing movement type, it is copying automatically updating controls. These are like basically codes, and they determine how inventory quantity updating should happen, how value should be updated. So it has got a direct link with the inventory management and also financial accounting. Some of the examples are movement types are 101. Whenever you receive any purchase order, stock, it can be external standard purchase order or stock transfer purchase order. Movement type is fixed as 101. 201, goods issued to cost center. 301, stock transfer from plant to plant. Like 561, initial stock entry. Like during the legacy data transfer, existing stock what you have in the business can be updated into our SAP system with 561. Or 601, when the goods will happen delivered to the customer, we have movement type 601. When the sales returns will happen, 651. All these movement types are intrinsically designed with all the controls ready to use. So this is the most important part of the and it is built very intelligently, making sure it takes care of all the aspects of inventory management posting and also accounting posting. So this is one of the very important part of the inventory management. Now, naturally, whenever you record any business process in SAP, it is recorded in the form of a document. So whenever you perform material movement, a document is posted which is called material document or inventory document. Now, depending on the transaction, every material document is also accompanied with the accounting document. Although there are some exceptions, but whenever you record any material movement, definitely a material document is posted. But sometimes or many times the accounting document also may be posted. We cannot post only accounting document. It has to be posted along with the material document. But sometimes only material document posted, but no accounting document is posted. So you can see that in the scenario. The material document will help us to track what are the changes which have happened. You can list all the documents recorded based on a movement type or for a material. In this month, what documents have been prepared. So this is very, very important. And these are posted in the current period which is open. That's why you do MMPV to close all the documents in the previous months. So you can start posting again goods receipt and goods issue in the next month. Material management at the company code level. Accounting document is basically updating the valuation, value to stock information. Along with the material document, an accounting document is posted, which will impact our financial implication. Basically, financial implication is there. And basically, inventory valuation, cost of the goods sold, etc., can be posted to GL account. For example, if I perform a goods receipt against a purchase order, system will determine automatically two GL accounts. The material account, which is like an asset account, material account will be debited, and a GRIR account is credited. Similarly, when I perform the goods issue for a delivery process, customer delivery, material account is credited, and the cost of the goods sold account is debited. So, which account to debit, which account to credit, account determination will happen. And based on the movement type, what transactions are supposed to happen for the automatic GL account determination, that information actually comes from the automatic account determination. Also, movement type. Movement type will have the information about the transactions. And based on transactions, you can set up the account determination in the system. Stock overview. At any given point of time, you can find out what is the stock available in our organization at the company code level, at the plant level, at the storage location level. In retail, we have a transaction called RWB. In as standard SAP, you have got MMB, but otherwise, basically stock overview. In the stock overview, you can also see some special information, whether stock is available as unrestricted stock, which is held under inspection, or whether the stock is available as per the batch number. All this information will give us the very important tracking of the stock in the system. So we'll see how to analyze this stock overview. Stock overview is like a reporting tool, you can say. Physical inventory. Physical inventory is part of the standard business activity what company has to ensure. It's like an audit requirement. At any given point of time, our book quantity should match with the physical quantity. Over the period of what happens is sometimes updating has not happened or we have missed out something. We come to know that no, physical quantity is not matching with the book quantity. But this variation has to be explained by the particular department. But having understood what has happened, you have to make sure that we synchronize both the quantity, we perform the physical inventory. So first you create a physical inventory document saying which materials have to be counted, and we send this to the storage location department, and they will count and then enter the physical inventory document in the system saying this is the quantity what we have seen physically in the storage location. Then the quantities are matched. Any discrepancies are there, they are posted for settlement purpose. So this is the activity what to do in physical inventory. It's a periodical activity. We have to do it according to the value of the material. Some physical inventory may happen for certain materials on monthly basis, or once in 3 months, or once in 6 months. But it's a mandatory activity for the year ending. So because it is one kind of process which will ensure what is the actual physical stock we have got carry forward to next year in terms of quantity and the value. So this is the another important periodical activity. Now batch management is part of the logistic general. Batch management is required for the products that you sell to customer or that you consume. So it is not restricted to only it is also available for production planning, also and sales and distribution. Basically, you get a batch number, and whenever you perform the goods receipt, the entire quantity available under that particular goods receipt can be assigned to a particular batch. The batch number can be created by the system, or you can assign an external batch number. The batch number will also have certain characteristic value. Like when you create a sales order, system can determine the batches. That means if customer says, I want all the products to be given belonging to same batch, in that case, you can ensure we are not only checking the availability of the stock, but also stock coming from a particular batch. Likewise, when you receive the material from the purchase order, we perform the goods receipt. Not only you are adding the quantity in the inventory, but also the quantity part, what we are assigning the inventory is given a batch number. So this is one important aspect of the batch management. It is something essential when you're dealing with materials which are chemical products or pharmaceutical products. Like, we have a concept of serial number also, which is able to track the inventory. Serial number is normally used for the manufactured items, or let's say, whenever you produce or purchase in certain quantity, we give a serial number. Each and every product has got a serial number. But here, entire stock is having one batch number. That means you can track tomorrow when you use the raw material in the final production. If you come across any issue with the quality, you can find out from which batch the raw material was used. Then you can trace it very easily. That's the whole idea of batch number. In sales and distribution, when you print the invoice, we must say, this is the material, this is the quantity you are giving, and this is a batch number. So that is how batch will come into picture. Valuation and account determination. This is the most important part of integration between the and financial accounting. Inventory valuation is the process of assigning a value to stock. That means you are expressing stock in two attributes. What the physical stock measured in quantity, and what is the value of the stock. Normally, when you say value, it is a financial accounting data. So the valuation of the stock will happen based on the pricing and accounting policies. We have different valuation methods, like we update the valuation value based on the moving average price or standard price. And account determination will ensure that inventory movements are recorded in the correct financial accounts. That means whatever is the value of the goods you want to reflect in financial accounting, first the value has to be calculated. For that, you require a valuation price, which can be coming in the form of average moving average price or standard price, and then we can do the account determination and value is updated. So we say material M1 we have got 100 pieces in the plant in the store location. But plant acting as a valuation area, this is a value-added stock. We are expressing in terms of value. That is what is called valuation. Valuation can happen in SAP at the company code level or at the plant level. But most of the time, we prefer to use valuation area as a plant. We will also look into this during the understanding process of the account determination. Reservations. Reservation is part of inventory management where we put aside certain stock reserved for certain production requirement or customer order. So you might have seen, or you will see rather when you're doing the training, when you put the stock, we reserve it for a particular sales order, like in make to order, for example. Make to order is a process where we took the manufacturing of the product as required by the customer. Then we enter the stock, we enter the sales order number. That means that particular stock, we are going to give it to that particular customer against a sales order. So when the delivery process will happen, it will do the availability check, find out whether stock is added for that particular sales order, then only goods issue can happen. So reservation is also part of the inventory management. So this part I already explained. Invoice verification is the next very important, part of inventory management. Where we put aside certain stock reserved for certain customer order. So you might have seen, or you will see rather when you're doing the training, when you put the stock, we reserve it for a particular sales order. Then we enter the stock, we enter the sales order number. That means that particular stock, we are going to give it to that particular customer against a sales order. So when the delivery process will happen, it will do the availability check, find out whether stock is added for that particular sales order, then only goods issue can happen. So reservation is also part of the inventory management. So this part I already explained. part of the purchase to pay cycle. It is almost like a final process in the purchase to pay cycle. The vendor will send the invoice once they supply the goods or given the service. We are entering this details into system by creating invoice. SD invoice is created by us based on our information. invoice is created based on the invoice given by the vendor. Unless invoice is entered, we cannot post to financial accounting. So we do the invoice verification. The word verification is used because whatever vendor has given the invoice, is that amount okay? We need to verify it with respect to our purchase order and goods receipt. So it is called matching. Invoices match with the PO and the goods receipt for the accuracy. Sometimes any discrepancies are there. These can be resolved before the payment processing. And once you post the invoice in the system, accounting document is generated. Sometimes while posting, the blocks will happen. Based on the configuration, certain blocks are created. You have to analyze the blocks. Only when you release the blocks, then the accounting document is posted. So invoice verification will lead to subsequent process of posting the document in FI in the form of accounting document, whereby it will update the vendor payable. And then based on that, the payment processing will happen. Payment processing is actually part of the FI activity. For all the updated payables, the FI accounting department will do the payment processing. Again, based on the payment term and then payment method, they will do the payment process, like whether payment should be made in the form of check printed or whether the amount should be transferred from our house bank to vendor bank transfer, any such method, or whether payment can be made to the vendor payment card facility. So all these are decided by the financial accounting process, payment processing. We will just go through remaining slides, not much in detail because these are very high-end, or you can say very detailed area of rather understood very clearly when you do the actual process in the system. But we'll try to making basically justification to our presentation. We'll just briefly explain them. Valuation in SAP is a fundamental aspect of inventory management. We cannot just say we have got stock this much quantity, but what is the value? So that is ensured by the valuation, and valuation will impact our financial reporting, cost control. Now, valuation process has to be done according to the requirements of the business. That means valuation can happen in different ways according to business requirement. Like for example, split valuation. There's a decision what business has to take, and we have to configure it. So valuation will have the control in terms of posting the information to financial accounting, depending on the configuration. So valuation and account determinations are linked to each other. So here we see some basic information in terms of valuation. Not all the information is coming from the material master, but here we say what is the valuation class, then price control. Are you going to use standard price or material price, moving average price? And basically, apart from this, you have got valuation group code, transaction. Those will come in the configuration. We will see that. Also, valuation category and valuation type also are required for the valuation posting. Overall parameters which will control SAP valuation area. Valuation area is basically either a plant or a company code, but mostly it is preferred to have the plant as a valuation area. Valuation type and valuation category. Like when you're doing split valuation, we can consider to configure valuation category, valuation type. Let's say valuation category is a quality, then valuation type can be high quality, medium quality, low quality. So the stock within the plant within store location, we are bifurcating according to the quality. High quality stock is so much, medium quality so much, or low quality so much. Or same material purchased from the domestic vendor, import vendor. Entire quantity, we are not going to reflect in one single quantity. Out of the total quantity, so much quantity procured from the internal vendor, so much from the external vendor or import vendor. So this will help us to the spec valuation. Valuation class is something like an attribute of the material. Material type and valuation are linked to each other. All finished goods will have one valuation class. All raw materials will have one valuation class. All trading goods will have one valuation class. All semi-finished goods will have one valuation class. So valuation class will help us to determine the GL accounts, which are always posted in the same way. Like whenever you do goods with for a raw material, a certain GL account is fixed for the goods of it, material, basically stock value. That GL account will remain same for all the raw materials. So valuation class will fix the what is the material from the accounting perspective or GL account determination perspective. Valuation methods, price control indicator, account determination. Split valuation has to be configured. You have to activate the split valuation and do the necessary configurations. Material price changes like material ledger, all this will become part of the material price changes. So these I have explained in earlier, but we'll see them in detail when you do the actual training program. Material price changes like standard prices, we have to do MR21 so that we can update the new price. Comes the requirement planning. Now, requirement planning itself, you can do a different presentation altogether. It is one of the very detailed application what you come across in SAP MM. As a MM consultant, we must be very much thoroughly acquainted with all the configuration area and how to do the MRP run and how it will affect our stock position in the system. As I said before, requirement planning is a key functionality which will ensure at any given point of time we have got the optimum quantity so that we don't invest money unnecessarily in huge amount of money for the inventory which is not consumed, or we are stocking less so that our consumption is suffering. So to ensure that we must have the optimum level of the stock level. But at any given point of time, as a person, I cannot know whether I should buy this or not to buy the other one. This is decided by the system. So using the MRP type and other master data parameters, what to maintain the material master, it will know what kind of planning is suitable for a particular material. But actual planning activity will happen through planning run. We do the planning run. Now, there are some important definitions what should be maintained in the material master data, and these are actually configured in the system. In the MRP consumption-based planning, we do the configuration. In the material master data, we maintain MRP type. Different types of MRP types are available, and each MRP type will control how the requirement planning run should happen. Like for example, consumption-based planning, we can say we can do reorder point planning or time-phase planning or forecast-based planning. In reorder point, again, manual reorder point planning or automatic reorder point planning. So based on MRP type, it will tell us what further data has to be entered. For example, if I do automatic reorder point planning, I must also maintain information about the forecast, how the forecasting should happen, what forecasting model should happen, and also whether any safety stock should be maintained. All this information will be captured in the material master. Another important part of the material master data is, from MRP perspective, lot sizing procedure. That means when the requirements are calculated, in what quantity we have to purchase, like lot to light, lot to lot. Say, for example, as per requirement planning, we need to buy 100 pieces or 90 pieces. To that extent only, purchase equation is created. But sometimes vendor will say fixed order lot. If the quantity always should be multiple of 10, that means if the quantity comes to 90, 92, we have to go for 100 pieces. So depending on the lot sizing procedure, actual requirement quantity adjusted to the quantity determined based on the lot sizing procedure. Procurement type, whether it is internal procurement or in-house production. Lead time. Lead time is also part of the requirement planning. That means depending on the lead time, suppose if you're doing reorder point planning, depending on the lead time, the quantity determined will vary. Means basically reorder point quantity is basically average consumption of the quantity per day. What's the lead time? If lead time is more, then you need to have the quantity available requirement is more. That means minimum the basically reorder point means quantity at which will trigger the MRP planning, MRP run to happen. Suppose if the lead time is shorter, lesser reorder point, more the lead time, higher the lead, MRP quantity, basically the reorder point quantity. So lead time is very important. So we'll see by adjusting the lead time, how it will calculate the actual quantity. We'll see that safety stock. These are the some of the standard, MRP types which are available. Again, MRP types are like proprietary data what we have in MM. We may not have to create on our own, but always you can create a new one by copying the nearest one and adjust the control. Like whether forecasting is compulsory or not compulsory, all these controls will come under the MRP type. Now, before we conclude the session, like in sales and distribution, we have certain basic functions. Basic functions means the functionality used in more than one application or transaction. For example, if you say pricing procedure is common, is a basic function in sales and distribution, like whether you get a quotation or a sales order or a contract, pricing has to happen. Likewise, when I do a purchase order or a contract, I need pricing to happen. So basically, there are basic functions available in MM, like in SD. One of the important basic function in MM is release strategy. Now, why release strategy is very important? Because purchasing is an activity where company wants to ensure the purchasing activity will happen according to certain basic guidelines or standard policy. Like suppose I create a purchase order. I cannot send a purchase order to vendor unless it is verified and released by certain authorized department or a person. Suppose if I create a purchase order which is value less than, let's say, 10,000 rupees, it is okay. I can send a purchase order. But if it is more than 10,000, I cannot issue the purchase order to vendor. It has to be checked by the particular department or the person, and then whether it is meeting the requirement, and then they authorize it. That means a release strategy is given. That means when you create a purchase requisition or a purchase order, a release strategy will come into picture. One or many statuses will come. Only when it is released, then only it will go into the process. I mean, the process is activated. If the purchase order is created straight away, I cannot send the output or send to the vendor. It has to be checked and released by the authorized person, and then we send the purchase order to vendor. So we can configure release strategy with the classification, without classification. For internal documents like purchase requisition, we can do without classification. But for the purchase order, we'll make use of the classification. It is one of the most interesting, and also sometimes it can become complex, but we need to fix it up. We will see how to go about it in terms of, configuration of the release strategy. Then comes the pricing. Pricing is basically a common basic function used in sales and distribution and MM, but application areas are different. We use the same condition technique here also in MM. As per the condition technique, we have to have the condition types, access sequence, tables, fields, procedure. In MM, we call it as schema. We set up the schema and schema determination. So the purpose of pricing configuration is to ensure automatic pricing. That means as a user, I don't have to say how the pricing should happen. Rather, it is automatically decided by the schema determined, and automatically system will search for the conditions based on the access sequence So you have the required price, discounts, freight, all are basically searched by the system using the access control, and the value is determined. So pricing is one of the important basic function. Then you have the automatic account determination. Account determination is a very important activity which is part of the inventory management and invoice verification. Like every time you do material movements, there's an implication from the financial perspective. So not only you are posting the inventory document, also the accounting document. Version management, like when you get a purchase order, you can do the version management. Message determination, basically output communication to vendors. Serial number in purchasing. Now, by the way, serial number is a logistic functionality. It is not only in MM. It is used in sales and distribution, in materials management, in quality management, in basically plant maintenance. So serial number profile has to be maintained accordingly. Either serial numbers are created automatically in the background, or created by, we can create serial number and then assign to the inventory. That means each and every piece what is added in the goods list will have a particular serial number, and when you issue the stock, it will also go with the serial number. So serial number is something similar to batch but entirely different. Material classification. Classification is a class application component. It is used throughout the SAP. We have to define the class and characteristics. We are going to see how to use the material classification in terms of batch management, because batch management will require a particular class type and the characteristics. We will see that. Now comes the almost last part of our discussion. What are the various modules with which the integration will happen? That means MM alone has standalone functions which are required, but some of these functionalities have to happen because of integration with the other modules. So during the training program, we'll see which part of the process we have integration, sales and distribution, and MM. For example, availability check, goods issue in the delivery, all these are basically happening with the integration with the MM. Likewise, production planning, warehouse management, financial accounting in terms of account determination and control. So this is a point of discussion as a very important understanding process as a consultant. So we'll see what are the areas where the integrations will happen. Now to conclude the presentation, what is the benefit of the SAP MM for the organization? Improved efficiency, because procurement is the most important part of the business activity as far as the MM is concerned. So we're ensuring that procurement is streamlined according to best business practices for purchasing. Also, inventory process and activity happens to the best business practice. Basically, you can say SAP provides best business practices in terms of recording our purchase orders, inventory process, and all this will automatically to cost saving. Like vendor management, you can do the source list, vendor analysis, ratings, so that right material at the right quantity available to the company. Better inventory control. So basically, real-time visibility of the stock, when to order, and how much quantity to order, that is coming from the MRP, so that we have proper inventory control, compliance and traceability. So these are the most important benefits of the SAP MM. So basically, I would like to thank you, all of you. We have watched the video presentation. This is a brief attempt to give the overall dimensions of width and breadth and depth of the MM module, which is very brief. But we are going to do that part in detail when the training happens. So this is like a demo video for the aspirants who would like to go for the MM training. I can be contacted with the following email addresses what I've given. So I conclude the presentation with thank you for your time and patience for watching through the video. Thank you once again.